We're going to be solving for variables and formulas. This is lesson 23F, and the last one for 23 before we move on to 24 in angles. I've got links in the description to help you, and remember you'll be given a paper with formulas that you can use during the GED test. And you just need to recognize how to use them, okay? It'll be labeled for what they are for area, perimeter, volume, etc., but you need to know how to use them, okay? We can use what we learned in the GED math algebra lessons to solve a formula for a different variable than what is shown. We did video 19A where we solved for a particular variable. By using the same operation on both sides of the equal sign, we can rearrange a formula to be solved for a different variable. So for the volume of a rectangle box, it's V equals LWH, length times width times height. We can solve this for the height, h, by dividing both sides of the formula by the LW. That'll isolate the h and get it by itself. That'll create a giant 1. Because it's got the same numerator and denominator, it makes a 1. So we have 1h. On this side, we have volume divided by length times width. See? So if you missed 19a, isolating a variable in an equation, that might help you if you watch that. And there's a link in this description to go back to that one, okay? So here we have a box. We can see that the length is 6 inches, the width is 5 inches, but it's got a question mark by the h. We don't know how high it is. The volume of this box is 90 square inches, so it's giving us the volume. The length is 6 inches and the width is 5 inches. What's the height? Well, we know volume equals length times width times height is the formula to find the volume. We can substitute in the values that we know. We can also divide both sides of this equation by that LW to get h by itself, so we can just plug in the information like this as volume divided by length times width. It says the volume is 90, so we have 90, and the length is 6 and the width is 5, so we have 6 times 5. That means we have 90 divided by 30. Well, that's 3, so we know the height is 3. And since it was in inches, we know it's 3 inches. We divided both sides of the equal sign by the LW to isolate that h to one side. Then we plugged in the known amounts and solved the formula for h. Now, we also could have just taken that formula, V equals LWH, and just put in the amounts we knew. 90 for volume, 6 for length, 5 for width, and then h. 6 times 5 is 30. We need to get that h by itself, so we divide both sides of the equal sign by that 30 to isolate the h. That makes a giant 1. Same numerator and denominator. We have 1h. 90 divided by 30 is 3. And actually, this will probably be quicker than rearranging the formula and then solving it. So if you just immediately put in the values you know, it might be faster than rearranging the formula. But it's good to know how to rearrange a formula, okay? So either way, we can put the known amounts into the formula and then use the same operation on both sides to solve for the remaining variable, or we can rearrange the formula first to solve for the variable we need, then put in the amounts we know and use the same operation on both sides. But just putting the known amounts into the formula is probably going to be quicker, all right? For this one, here we have a triangle. We know the height is 4 centimeters, but we don't know what the base is. It says the area of this triangle is 12 centimeters squared. The height is 4 centimeters. What is the base? So we look on our sheet that they give us for area of a triangle, and we see that this is the formula. Well, we know that the area is 12. We know the height is 4. And we know we have to multiply it by half, but we don't know what the b for base is. So now we have 12 equals half base times 4. It doesn't matter what order we multiply them in. So we can do half times 4, which is 2. Half of 4 is a 2. So now we've got 12 equals 2b. To get this b alone, we divide both sides by the 2. That makes a 1. We have 1b on this side, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. See? We also could have rearranged the formula first and then put in what we knew. Even if the b's in the middle, we ignore it, and we divide it by half an h. We divide this side by half an h. That means, and we can use 0.5 for the half when we use our calculator, right? That means the area divided by 0.5 times the height is going to be the base. And the height was 4, so 0.5 times 4 is a 2. That gives us a 6. So either way, we get the same answer, but putting our numbers in right away into the formula we know could be quicker, okay? A carpet has an area of 100 square feet, 108 square feet, and a width of 9 feet. What is its length? Well, the area of a rectangle is area equals length times width. We put in what we know. The area is 108. We don't know what the length is. That's what we need to find, but the width is 9. So now we have 108 equals L times 9. We need to get the L by itself, so we divide both sides of the equation by that 9 to get rid of it. It makes a 1, same numerator and denominator. Now we have 1L on this side, and 108 divided by 9 is 12. So we know that it's 12 feet. Whoops, that's supposed to be only 1. So it's 12 feet, okay? If we rearrange the formula, we can divide both sides of the formula by the W to isolate the L. Now we have a 1 because it's the same numerator and denominator. And on this side, we have area divided by width. Either way, we're going to get a 12. See? That's quicker. I think so anyway. You may feel differently. Now this one says the volume of the cylinder is 148.365 cubic inches. And it tells us that the radius is 1.5 inches. What is the height? We don't know what the height is. Well, here's the formula for the volume of a cylinder. We know the volume. We know that's 148.365. We know that pi is 3.14. We know the radius is 1.5. And because it's radius squared, we have to square that, don't we? And then multiply it by the height. So what we do is we square this first. 1.5 times 1.5 is 2.25. Now we need to multiply that to our approximation of pi, and we get 7.065 h, because we multiplied those together, and that's what we got. We need to get h by itself, so we divide both sides by that big decimal, and it's got the same numerator and denominator, so that makes 1h. But on this side, when we divide the 148.365 by that decimal, we get a 21. So we know it's 21 inches tall. See? So we solved it for this letter, even though it says V equals, we were able to solve it for the height. The perimeter of Emma's rectangular backyard is 210 feet. The width is 30 feet. What is the length? So it's a rectangle. We know the width is 30. They want to know what the length is. Well, we know the perimeter of a rectangle is 2 times length plus 2 times width. So that if that's 30, then that's 30. We need to find out what these two measures are. And they'll be the same as each other, right? Because it's a rectangle. So what we can do is put in what we know. We know the width is 30. And we know the perimeter is 210. So now we have 210 equals 2L plus 2 times 30. 2 times 30 is 60. Now we have 210 equals 2L plus 60. We need to get this L by itself, but we're first going to get the 2L by itself by subtracting 60 from both sides of the equation. You could even look at it as adding a negative 60, but in this case, it's probably easier to look at it as just taking 60 away. That's going to create a 0 pair here and eliminate this right here. So the 2L just drops down, and 210 minus 60 is 150. Now to get the L by itself, we divide both sides of the equation by this 2. That'll make a 1 here, same numerator and denominator. We have 1L, and 150 divided by 2 is 75. So we know that this length of our yard is 75 feet. Now the equation could actually look like 210 minus 60, or 2 times 30. And then it's divided by 2. So if it asks you which equation fits the problem, it could look like this, because they're condensing it and putting it all together. It's the 210 minus 60 right here. 210 minus 60 divided by 2. See? So be careful. All right? This one has a circle, and it's got a line drawn for the diameter, but it's got a question mark. It says the circumference of the circle is 62.8 inches. What is its diameter? we look on our sheet for the circumference of a circle for the formula, and we see that it's c equals pi d, but we don't know what d is. So what we can do is, we know pi is 3.14. We put in what we have, 62.8 is the circumference, and it equals 3.14 times d. We divide both sides of the equation by the 3.14 and make a giant 1 here, because it's got the same numerator and denominator, so we have 1d, and when we do the division on this side, we get 20. So we know that the diameter is 20. See? The volume of a square pyramid is 96 cubic centimeters. So right away, notice that it says square, because that means all the sides are the same length, right? That's the definition of a square. One side of the base is 6 inches. Well, if one side is and it's a square, then all the sides are 6. What is the height? Well, the formula for the volume of a square pyramid is V equals 1/3 times the base edge squared times height. That means side times side. Okay? So be very aware that when it says base edge, they just mean side. Okay? So it could be s squared. Same thing. If we know that that is a 6, then we've got 96 equals 1/3 times 6 squared times h. 6 times 6 is 36. Now we've got 96 equals 1/3 times 36 times h. This is a unit fraction with a 1 as a numerator, so we could just divide 36 by 3 to get the answer, and that's going to give us a 12. Now we have 96 equals 12h. We divide both sides of the equation by this 12 to get that h by itself, and it makes a giant 1, doesn't it? Same numerator and denominator, so we have 1h on this side, and 96 divided by 12 is 8 on this side, so we know it's 8 centimeters high. See? Now this will take you back to an earlier video. The total interest on a loan is $1,500. And the interest rate is 5% and the time is 10 years. What is the principal amount that is borrowed? So we did this I equals P times R times T to find the interest of a loan, principal, rate, time. And we put in what we know. We know the interest was $1,500. We're looking for P. The interest rate is 5%. So we're going to write that as a decimal as 0.05. And the time was 10 years. See? 0.05 times 10 is 0.5. So now we've got 1,500 equals P times 0.5. We divide both sides of the equation by this 0.5 to get the P by itself. That makes a big 1, same numerator and denominator. When we do the division on this side, we get 3,000. And that's the principal of the loan. This poor person borrowed $3,000 over 10 years at 5% interest, and his interest that he paid on the loan ended up being $1,500. So that means if he borrowed $3,000, he had to pay back $4,500. Oh, be careful when you borrow money, right? The volume of a cone is 157 square inches. So we know the entire volume is 157 square inches. The height is 6 inches. So what's the radius of the base? Ooh. So we know that the volume of a cone formula, according to the sheet, is V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. This pi r squared is the area of the base. Altogether, the pi r squared is the area of that base circle, okay? It's the area of a circle. We put in what we know. The 157 is the volume, and it equals 1/3. Pi is 3.14. The radius squared, and we know the height is 6 inches. Now what we can do is 3.14 times 6, because it doesn't matter what order. These are all being multiplied to each other, right? 3.14 times 6 is 18.84. So now we have 1/3 times 18.84 times radius squared. This is a unit fraction, so instead of multiplying it by 1/3, we can divide 18.84 by 3. Whenever there's a 1 for a numerator, that means that number can be just divided by that denominator. Now we have 18.84 divided by 3 times radius squared is going to equal that 157. We do the division and we get 6.28. So now we have 6.28 times radius squared equals the 157. We divide both sides of the equation both sides of the equal sign by this 6.28 to get the r squared by itself. And when we divide, that turns into a giant 1, same numerator and denominator, right? When we divide 157 by the 6.28, we get 25. So now we have 1r squared is equal to 25. And what number times what number would equal 25? What could r be that when you square it, it equals 25? 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So we know an r not squared is a 5. So we know the radius is a 5. See? And don't worry if you have to watch this video again, but it should be really helpful for you to do that skill focus on page 285, all right? And I want you to be aware of volume versus area questions. There's going to be a question in the book, if you've got the same copyright as I do. It says a small section of roof has the shape of a triangle and the area is 10.5 square feet. So they're not talking about a triangle prism. When you see small section of a roof in the shape of a triangle, you might think that it's like this because it's like the roof of a house, right? No, they're talking about a triangle. They didn't say triangular prism, and they didn't say volume. They said area. The area is 10.5. So they're talking about just a triangle. So don't overthink things and don't make them harder than they are, okay? And beware if it says volume or area. All right? We're going to start talking about angles next. And we're going to be in lesson 24. I'm going to have links to 3.7 from Algebra I that told you how to isolate a variable in a formula. I actually had it in this playlist. And there's going to be links to that 19a to isolate a variable and the previous videos for lesson 23 that we did. And we'll be moving on to angles. All the different angles, okay? So, keep trying. Keep going. Don't quit. You can do this, all right? I'll see you next time. Bye.